Welcome back to Spin Magazine's Lip Service. Welcoming to the show, Hives Pelle.
Thank you.
Hives. How are you, my brother?
I'm happy to be here.
Happy to be here, too. Happy to have you here. I'm excited for the show tonight, kicking off the tour.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to be here at this table and also in a broader sense, happy to be in the States starting the tour and happy to be around.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to feel great. I mean, it's been like 10 or 11 years since your last record, and what an amazing new record is, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much, yeah. It took some doing, apparently.
Yeah, for a band that loves to tour, you're always on the road. I mean, talk to me about it. Was that a hard time being away for so long for you?
I mean, we weren't really away. We were playing shows and stuff, but it was really hard to not release new music. It was strange to kind of keep playing the same songs over and over again. It's like, I don't even know, like time is elastic in a flat circle and all that. I don't even understand what time is the last 10 years. But now we're here and there's new stuff. Did
you ever think it'd be 30 years we'd be sitting here? It's like half the Rolling Stones lifespan at this point for you guys.
It's been more than half. No, I mean, not really. I guess we started young enough that it was a possibility. I guess the reason we've been around for 30 years is we don't really think in those terms. Like, we don't think like, maybe we can make it another year. It's kind of just an ongoing thing. And none of us are like, I don't... it's pretty... Like, we did a tour with the Rolling Stones when they turned 40, like their 40 Licks tour, and we were opening up for them, and we were... I don't know how long we've been a band at that time, but that was like the first time we saw what that could be like. And it didn't look too bad.
Your audiences of like 50,000 or more sometimes too, right?
And they seemed to be happy doing it. Like... And they were like, well, people have been calling us old since we were 25. Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, just kind of keep going.
Well, when you start a band, I guess at 13, it seems like you've been playing forever, right? Because you kind of started at that age.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It was like high school. It's just, the high school band that never quit, I guess.
Yeah. Should we move the mic up a little closer? I feel like it's a little far away. Is that okay?
Is it better like this?
There we go. So we're kicking off the tour tonight at Brooklyn Steel. Do you have a special place in your heart for New York City?
Yeah, I actually have a house in Brooklyn, not far from the venue.
Oh, you do? Amazing.
I rent it out though, so I'm not there much anymore. But I used to spend a lot of time here, and I love it. I'm really happy to be back.
Now, do you guys hang out off stage for the 23 hours that you're not performing here? Is there still like that camaraderie where you're hanging out as a band a lot?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's no one else to hang out with.
Right. It's only the band.
It's these people, and maybe some crew guys.
Right. So take me back to the beginning, if you don't mind. We were just chatting about it. About 13 or so, obviously you and your brother and the other guys met up. And tell me how that all came about early on.
Well, I've known my brother my whole life, obviously.
Yes.
And then I've known Chris Dangerous, the drummer, since I started first grade. And then we met the other guys at like 13 or 14 or something. And it's been like the same people. Like one guy quit 10 years ago, Dr. Matt Destruction. Other than that, it's like the same people.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's been a weird life. And it's like there's so many things that we only share with, the people that are in the band. So you got to kind of, it's something, it's pretty cool.
And growing up like 13 or so, your mom was a teacher, and I think your dad. And tell me about your mom and dad and what they did for a living.
Well, mom was a teacher and dad was a doctor, which meant, I guess, we were middle class, but we grew up in a small town in Sweden, and it was like during the 80s, it was very like egalitarian and kind of equal. So I never knew if somebody had money or didn't, because we all kind of felt like the same thing. I thought that the way it works was that if your parents divorce, you live in an apartment, and if they don't, you live in a house. Right. That's how I thought it worked. I didn't know
so did you live in a house?
I lived in a house with married parents, yeah. But I was envious of the people that were living in apartments because they had like cable TV and could watch wrestling and stuff, which I thought seemed cool.
Were you into wrestling early on?
Yeah, it was fun, yeah.
Yeah.
I think kind of 10% of what we do is kind of wrestling.
Yeah. When I look at the suits, they kind of remind me of, I don't know if you remember this wrestler years ago, Mil Mascaras, but he was one of the wrestlers from the 80s. And the suits that you wear now kind of remind me of his mask.
Oh, that's
back
cool.
In the day, yeah. So your mom and your dad, do you remember the first band that you kind of fell in love with early on growing up?
AC/DC at like 6 years old, I think. There was a cassette that like... I think Nicholas taped from an older friend. Like there were all these like an older generation of like 5-year-older kids who were into like, heavy metal and hard rock and stuff. And AC/DC was like the first one that I thought Kiss looked really cool.
Yeah.
but I didn't like the way they sounded. I liked AC/DC way more, and that was like the first music I decided I loved on my own. And I guess I haven't evolved that much.
And obviously,
I still love AC/DC.
And the Ramones in the 40s and the 50s music too, I guess, early on.
Yeah, that was like around the time when we formed the band. I guess Ramones were like earlier at 12 or something. I started getting into punk. I didn't know that punk existed when I was 6.
Yeah.
But then it was like the Misfits and the Dead Kennedys and the Ramones at like 12, 13 or something.
And I feel like Fugazi is a band that everyone listened to early on too.
Not where we came from. They weren't really a thing that I recall. Like I liked them and stuff, but they weren't like in the vernacular or whatever it was that you get to hear. It was like, and there was no difference then between like punk and metal. So there was also like Metallica and Slayer. I remember it's like I had a cassette. It was like Metallica, Slayer, Ramones, and Misfits, and that was pretty much all I listened to. Like those 2 cassettes.
And weirdly enough, I heard that you loved the first Skid Row record, which I never.
Yeah, that was the first record I bought with my own money. When I was like, I got like an allowance, and I bought that first Skid Row. I still think that's really good. You know, it still sounds cool to me.
Yeah. There's this weird kind of underground metal scene in Sweden too. The Helicopters and Backyard Babies, Crash Diet, a lot of those bands. So what do you attribute that scene to? Because bands like Hanoi Rocks were happening in Finland.
Yeah,
but that scene
that
never
was so
really
much
happened.
earlier though.
Yeah,
that was like the glam thing, and they were even like before glam. Like they were kind of glam before glam. You know, but in Sweden, like that Helicopters thing is more like. So Nicke, who's the singer in Helicopters, used to be in Entombed. And for some reason, he's like a kind of a quiet guy, but he's so charismatic that everybody starts bands that sound like his bands. Right. So like he started Entombed, and there was like a big wave of death metal bands. And then he started Helicopters, and a big wave of like bands that started sounding like the Helicopters and looking like them kind of just popped up everywhere. Whereas like we were more popular, but less influential. Like there's, I guess like it's, it was more fun to be like the Helicopters than the Hives, I guess. But So that's what I attributed to. Just that guy starting that band meant that everyone wanted to be like him. I think it was the people that were in the death metal bands just kind of switched genres.
Yeah, sure. This really is your first band ever. You really had
nothing else. It's all I got.
Our show today is brought to you by the fine folks at Sonos. I have to take a moment to talk to you about my favorite speakers on the planet. Sonos. First impressions, open up the box, some of the sleekest speakers I've ever seen in my life. Sonos has hands down been my favorite speaker brand for years, especially as a touring musician myself. I've used all types of speakers throughout my career, and I gotta tell you, Sonos beats them all for sound quality and ease of use. I recently got the Beam soundbar and the extra subwoofer. I plugged it in, it's super easy to use, and I gotta tell you, my room fills up with sound like no one's business. The Beam soundbar is the clearest dialogue and such insane bass, especially when hooked up to my extra subwoofer. My whole room shakes. It literally fills up my bedroom with so much sound. Lately, I've also been using the Arc soundbar for my living room TV. It's super easy to connect to. I was able to seamlessly hook it up. It's sleek and it blends right into my space. The Arc soundbar has really changed the way that I watch TV and movies. I'll have some friends over. I hook it up to the extra subwoofer, and it really helps to create that intense surround sound. The design is immaculate. It looks great below my TV in my living room. My favorite thing about Sonos speakers is how easy they are to use. You can set them up in under 20 minutes or so. The sound is incredible, they look incredible, and they are by far the best gift you can buy for anyone. Head over to Sonos.com to learn more and find gifts for every listener on your list.
Any weird jobs you had growing up? I know that you did some odd jobs growing up. You made some signs for a convention and things like that.
Yeah.
I always love to hear these stories about what people did early on.
It was a lot of running upstairs. I was a mailman and a paperboy. That was mainly it, which, gave me my rock hard buns and the stamina to do the rock show, I guess. I think it was mostly that. And then there was that convention center. And then I was studying to be a psychologist, and then the band took off. Or like when I say took off, it meant that we had shows, so I couldn't study, but we weren't making any money. Like we were making gas money and maybe, buying some food with selling merch and buying food.
And those shows were early on when you were like 15 or so? Because the band had started to do demos like 14, 15, 16.
Well, no, it's more like before we were out of school, we couldn't really do any touring. We did shows, but mostly like very locally, and
you had to hide in the basement because you weren't old enough to go into the
stuff
clubs.
like that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, we play like youth centers, I guess. We wouldn't play like a bar or anything.
Yeah.
That'd be illegal. And we played a snowboarding competition when we were like 15. That was really like in the far north of Sweden, but that was like the only. And I think our parents were like, "Well, you should take separate trains, like we're the royal family or something. Like if one kid dies, we still have one or whatever."
Were your parents into the fact that you wanted to do music for a living, or did they kind of try to dissuade you from that early on?
I don't think we thought of it as making music for a living. We thought of it as being in a band, and we were going to be in like the coolest band of all time.
Yeah.
And making a living was not on the radar, because we figured like none of the bands that we like make a living. So if you're in a good band, you don't make a living. If you're in a bad band, you can make a living. But we don't want to be in a bad band. So that was not. I don't think it was even a goal of ours. We just wanted to. It was just like the pursuit of excellence. Like we wanted to do something that we were impressed by, and then it turns out that it was the same stuff everyone else was impressed by, I guess.
Yeah, talk to me about the first time you heard some of those bands, the Stooges, the Ramones, we had touched base on. Like when you first heard bands like that and your relationship to those artists, that minimalist punk.
Well, the Ramones was it was like 80s, early 90s Ramones. Like I knew about like Blitzkrieg Bob and all that stuff. But we loved those late Ramones albums.
Yeah.
Like that was our
Great
like the
records.
sort of like popular, like Mondo Bizarro and like those records, Brain Drain, I guess.
Even
that
the
was
Joe
the era
Ramone
when
Sony records were great too.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
That was later though. But like when we were in school, like those records came out, the later Ramones, like kind of poppier Ramones. And we loved that stuff. And then like the Stooges we got into just because people heard like our second record and were like, "Oh, these guys sound like the Stooges." We're like, maybe we should check the Stooges out. I hear it's Iggy Pop's old band. Like we had no idea they existed before we sounded like them, or like supposedly sounded like them. And we're like, well, this is great. But it was like after the fact that people said that we sounded like them that we discovered the Stooges.
But you're right, they probably never went on to make a ton of money. Iggy on solo, but the Stooges themselves
I mean,
never.
we loved Iggy Pop and stuff, and we were aware of him since we were children, but we weren't aware of the Stooges, really.
Yeah, and early on, where did the image come from? Because obviously you guys always look amazing. You always wear these suits that are matching. I guess on tour, you probably only have that one suit, or do you have multiple versions?
It's pretty disgusting, actually.
You have the one suit. But you always looked incredible. You always had these matching black and white suits, tuxedos. Where did that come from? I mean, was that at an early age? At 15, you said, the Ramones all wore leather jackets, so we need to have an outfit like that that's something memorable.
Yeah, well,
easy.
it was just like, it was a rebellion against what was current in like punk and indie music, which was like that kind of grunge ideal of just like wearing whatever you rolled out of bed in, or like going on stage and acting like you were not on stage. Because I guess they were reacting against like glam rock, which was so poofy and like kind of too much going on.
You never went through your glam rock phase.
No, I remember liking like Guns N' Roses, but I wasn't really like. No, I wasn't in a band at the time.
Yeah.
I was too young to be in a band when I liked that stuff. But so the reason for the clothes was that like we wanted it to be like a show. Like we saw James Brown on TV, and like that's what it should be, like that, but a punk band.
Yeah.
So it should be like dressed up and stuff. And it was so fun because we play like these squats in Europe, like these super like anarchist punk squats wearing suits, and there'd always be a bunch of funny altercations about it, like. We get into fights over wearing suits. But we just thought that like we were into the fact that it was showbiz, and it was the uncoolest thing you could do at the time, like to be into the fact that it was showbiz. And like we even built like a big sign with light bulbs on it that we'd like lug into these like tiny little basement shows and stuff and act like we were on an arena. And then when we actually started playing arenas, it kind of like wasn't as. It was weird because we were doing all that shit, like that overblown showmanship, because we were playing to 20 people. And that's why we thought it was fun. And then we're like, well, now we're actually doing that. You know, it's not like there's no sarcasm or irony in it anymore. What do you do? Like, do we do something else? But like, it's kind of too late for that. Like,
in a way, I guess it was like changing into your superhero outfits, right? You would put those on, it was like you become superheroes in a way.
It's like war paint.
Yeah. So did you win the fights, by the way, if you got in a lot of fights early on?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty good at avoiding it by either running away or looking like we can fight.
Yeah.
And that's usually all it took. I mean, and a lot of times when people wanted to fight you, they were so drunk that it wasn't really a problem. But, I don't want to fight at all.
Well, take me back from 93 to about 94, your first record, Barely Legal, and how you came to getting the record deal from your demos.
It's like 97, I think that record was. And it was because we released an EP in I think 96, so we recorded in 96. And then 97, we graduated school. That was the first time we were free to roam Earth or whatever. And 2 weeks after graduation, we recorded our first album. That was in 97, I mean, which was Barely Legal. And neither us nor our record company thought it was going to anything was going to come of it. So we were we had odd jobs and we started studying and stuff like that. And then we got to do one tour as the first out of 4 bands. That was our record company kind of arranged a tour with their biggest bands. It was Refused and No Fun at All and a ska band called Liberator and us first. And we would sometimes play Before Doors or whatever.
I've been to those gigs and they're really hysterical. The place opens at 9, but you're on at 8:30.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't think anyone's going to be here.
And then, but it was such an awesome experience for a bunch of 18-year-old kids to go roam through Europe and get free beer and wine and eat baguettes in France and see every city in Europe. And after that, I guess. We were working on the second album, Veni, Vicious, and we did that for quite some time. And then we recorded it once and failed because we didn't have enough songs, and the mood was really shit. And then we spent another 6 months finishing it, and then magic happened, and we got really popular on that album.
Yeah, and the first record, you had some odd jobs. You kept quitting these jobs to go on tour. Was that what was happening?
Quit the job, go on tour. Move out of your apartment, go on tour, come back home, get a new apartment, get a new job, do that for 2 months, move out. Because we couldn't afford, we couldn't afford to have apartments if we were on tour, and we couldn't afford, we didn't, it was kind of really hand to mouth. Yeah. But, we were young enough that we could still kind of live off our parents a little bit, I guess.
Any great memories from those first tours that you did?
Yeah, tons. It was so much fun. Kind of just being, group of friends, going everywhere in Europe and having these weird, kind of fucked up experiences. Going. I remember we had a really great night where we played in Slovenia, and we, the minute we stopped playing the show, it turned into a gay disco. While we were loading out, and it was and then we found out DRI, Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, the old kind of hardcore crossover band, which we really liked when we were 12, was playing some squat down the street, and we went there and we went to that show, and that was that was really wild, weird, because it was so lawless. Eastern Europe at that time was completely lawless, and we had some Slovenian money because we sold a couple of T-shirts. And got paid for the show, I guess. And then we're we can't use this anywhere else. So we went to a gas station, driving out of the country at kind of at 4 a.m. after that show. And we were oh, well, let's buy cigarettes with all of it because we're going to need cigarettes the rest of the tour. And we just forked up all the money we had and said cigarettes. And he started scratching his head and he gave us a fucking boxes and boxes of cigarettes. So that we're free cigarettes. The rest, everyone started smoking a lot. And then we got stopped at the border by machine gun wielding customs officers who dragged us out in underwear in the snow, and it was a bizarre time
for smuggling cigarettes.
No, just because they were they want to fuck with this rock band from Western Europe that
What was that, $26 that you made on that show?
Something like that. Yeah. It was the currency exchange was nuts.
Along the way, you have all these amazing, Kerrang and Enemy and all the magazines start singing your praises. I think Spin at that point around then called you guys the best live band in the world.
We're still saying that, by the way.
I'm still saying it too, by the way.
We're still using that. Spin magazine calls them, 20 years later.
We'll say it too on this podcast. So, but talk to me again. We were talking a little bit about Veni, Vicious and sort of working up to that point of that record, and that was sort of your breakthrough record at this point. And even the story behind songs like Hate to Tell I Told You So, tell me the story behind that song and how that came about, because obviously that was sort of your breakthrough song.
Yeah, that was the big one. And at the time, we played so fast that we figured if we have one song that's slower, people are going to like that the most because it sounds most like normal music, or what we kind of said normal music. And I think we also that's the one where people started comparing us to the Stooges. but it's like it was a long, kind of complicated. We kind of decided to play every riff twice as long as we thought we should,
Right.
to kind of make like, and we realized then that it was that was the first time we realized like just kind of repeating stuff over and over and over again is awesome.
Yeah.
So that was like the most repetitive song, and we first made a video for AKIT. And that kind of didn't take off. I guess it was popular, but kind of more of an underground thing. And then we did a video for Hate So I Told You So. And that got really big, but it felt gradual to us because we were like in the band. And every month we'd play to more people and more people. But to everyone else in the world, I guess it felt like we came out of nowhere. And
by the way, at that point, you guys have been together for probably 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, like
too.
7 years or something like that. Yeah, and which was kind of cool, like, because when we were like, it was like the Hives, the Strokes, the White Stripes, and all that stuff. We're like, well, we're like 7 years deep here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, these new bands. So I'm like, okay, cool. But I guess, it makes sense because we were very like under the radar and like the first 7 years we were in school. So like we couldn't make a splash. Really.
So how does it feel at that point? Because we were just talking about Courtney Love and Noel Gallagher and people like this that were singing your praises as well as Enemy and Kerrang. How did that feel at that point after 7 years and kind of having this hit record of everyone starting to sing the band's praises?
It was really cool. I remember like those where you play in LA and like all the famous people start showing up.
It's like a room of only famous people at the Roxy or wherever
exactly.
it is.
Like it's the Roxy and it's like, oh, that's Courtney Love. There's Morrissey and all that stuff. But I loved that. That was really fun. And then we did one in London too, where it's like all the Britpop like royalty showed up, like Noel Gallagher was there and stuff. No, I think those were all people that we were like aware. Those were like the famous people when we were growing up. So that was awesome.
What was the story behind Main Offender? Another great song off of that record.
The title is lifted from, I didn't know he had a record called that, but there was a photo of Keith Richards with a written Main Offender on a chalk, like in chalk on a wall or whatever, or like blackboard or something. And I was like, oh, that's a cool title. And I took the title from that. But then like I realized he had a solo album called that, and that's why he done that. And it was really like kind of, because around that time, I had a friend who was into psychedelic music, and he gave me the Sonics compilation called Psycho Sonic, because he thought it was going to be psychedelic music. Like, and he bought it, and he's like, he decided he didn't like it, but he's like, Pelle's going to love this, and he gave it to me in like the school cafeteria. And that album was kind of like somebody like stroked my DNA. I was like, this is music for me. Because I loved like punk and I loved 60s music. I didn't know that there was 60s punk.
Yeah. By the way, underrated band, by the way, the Sonics. Amazing
great.
Band.
Like one of our favorite all-time bands.
Yeah.
And the Main Offender was, around the time, it's very influenced by them, I think.
Would you say if there's songs that you're writing that feel like they'd be too much of a hit, you tend to go the other direction in terms of the writing?
In a way, we throw away a lot of melody because we don't think that like fits. Yeah. We want it to just be this insane, energetic noise. And if you put too much melody in it, like, I mean, that's what most people like, melody. And if like Swedish people seem to have a knack for it, like it's all, it's easy for Swedes, like come on.
ABBA.
And we have to like constantly like fight our, that we want to put more melody in.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, it can be like an inverse relationship to energy. Like, it's hard to come up with examples, but sometimes if you're just like screaming one note all the time, that sounds more intense and energetic as opposed to like singing melodies. So I think it's not like throwing away hits really, but we want it to be a hit for some, that it's just like this weird, like maybe a weird turn of phrase, or like we want it to be hits in other ways. Almost like hip hop, where it's more about like the alliteration and kind of like repeating phrases and stuff more than singing a chorus melody. Like, we don't like choruses. We like verses.
A couple other songs that are my favorite songs that you all do: TikTok Boom and Walk Idiot Walk. Two other songs I love. Tell me the stories behind those songs.
Yeah. Let's start with Walk Idiot Walk, because that's before that. It was like, that was we're going to be the first thing we put out after we got massively popular. Like, we spent like a year making a record, and we wanted but we always feel like we want to react against the last record we did. Like, Veni, Vidi, Vici, so like a messy, like big roomy sound, and we wanted it to be really tight and kind of
concise
sounding and like robotic. And that was like we were talking about making it like a mix of Kraftwerk and the Sex Pistols. Like
even
that was the
Devo
idea.
too, I guess, right?
Yeah, like which ends up being Devo, I guess. So we were like we were kind of messing around with that sound, and that like that riff came out, and it was the rest of it was written really quickly, kind of like in one go, like the riff and the chorus bit. And then it was pretty easy. It came together pretty easily. And then I think we played it at South by Southwest. We had a few new songs, and we played that was one of them. And then some journalist called it like the best rock song since Smells Like Teen Spirit. And after that, there was no way the label was not going to put that out as the first single. We're like, oh yeah, sure. Not. They're like, if you have Smells Like Teen Spirit, you got it. I'm like, yeah, sure, but is it like, I don't know, man. Like, not a lot of songs are that, you know. But
they always need something to hook into. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was the first single then. And I remember mixing it before all the other songs and stuff so that we could put that first single out. And there was a lot of speculation at the time that it was about like George Bush and like 9/11, all this stuff and war and terror, you know. But it wasn't really specifically that. It's an anti-authority song, and I guess people saw what was the authority of the time in it. But so there was a lot of like questions about the political connections to that song.
But it's
speaking
not what it was
speaking
about.
of Devo, like Jerry Casale from Devo wanted to make a video for it. And he wanted to have like a Dick Cheney lookalike and all, so he made it like completely about that. And I guess we were kind of uncomfortable with that. Like, we're a Swedish band. Like, were we like,
getting too
we
political.
really getting, no, like, and specifically in American politics.
Right,
like,
right.
I know a lot about like European politics, but I wouldn't say I got like a PhD in American politics, really.
Especially around that time, everybody was so hypersensitive of what was going on too. So
yeah, it was a weird time, definitely.
Yeah, and about the live show, obviously, about that time, you get noticed for having this incredible live show. It's almost like a sport for you. You get injured sometimes.
Yeah.
Recently, you got hit in the face with the mic, right?
Yeah, I'm like an athlete or whatever.
Right. Talking about the live show, do you kind of like getting injured? Because obviously, I feel it's almost like part of your show at this point. Like, the more dangerous it is, the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I need to feel something. I can't do a show and not have it hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Like either like, you know, jump into things or like scream so much that it hurts my throat or whatever it is I'm doing. But I always feel like it's got to like be physical and you got to feel something. Like that's why I do it. Like I like it's some kind of like full release for me. Like it's the culmination of everything. I think kind of that's awesome about being a human, like nuts, like endorphin levels and, you know, crawling around on teenagers screaming into a microphone. It's like, that's my idea of fun.
I was watching the video when you hit yourself in the face the other day, a couple months ago with the mic, and you didn't even stop, by the way.
No, why would I? I think the coolest thing you can
pouring
be
down your face, and it's, you know.
I think the coolest thing you can be as a rock band is unstoppable.
Yeah.
If you have a band like and you throw like somebody throws like a plastic bottle on a band and they stop playing, like I think that's like the biggest sign of weakness I know. That's not a dare, by the way, or a challenge to anyone in the crowd, but I feel like it's important to me to believe that a band is unstoppable.
Yeah, no question. Well, this new record, in fact, it's a crazy story behind this new record. So talk to me about the story behind this record. It's about Randy Fitzsimmons and how he was like the sixth member of the band, and you guys actually dug up his grave, I think?
It wasn't a grave because he wasn't in it.
Right.
We needed to figure out if he was. He's always been involved in all our albums. And in the band from the get-go. It's like a sixth member or friend or foe or whatever he is, but he's always been there and he's not anymore, and it's really strange. And that's what, probably the main reason it took such a long time to make the album. So we heard that he was dead. We found was supposedly like the grave, trying to find him, and that's where we found the demos. And they are his demos. You can tell they sound like all his demos always sounded the same. I guess he always used like the same shit equipment. So we're pretty sure that they are like Randy Fitzsimmons originals.
So when you say you heard he was dead, had you not been in contact with him?
No, not for years.
For years.
That was what was weird. Like we were touring and playing shows, but we didn't have new songs. Like there was no new songs, and we were kind of just like keeping it going, pretending like everything's going to be okay, but it was pretty painful.
So historically, he was the one helping writing the songs and everything, and then he kind of goes off the radar. And someone said, "Wait a minute, is he?"
He always did though. Like between every record, he'd go off the radar for a year or two while we were touring. Like, and it made no sense, like kind of hanging out all the time. And he doesn't want to travel. Like that's one of the things, like why he's not like playing in the band and stuff. And but it just took way longer this time, and he never surfaced again.
So where do you go to? You went to find these demos. There was actually like a monument to him or something.
Well, it's just like kind of I wouldn't call it a monument. Looked real homemade. It wasn't like a mausoleum or anything. Like more a little wooden kind of thing.
And the demos were in there.
Yeah.
So there was this like 10 or 11 year hiatus between records. Now, you were just talking about you were touring this whole time, but it must have been hard for you being a band that loves to create and loves to go in there and create new music.
Yeah, it's terrible. I didn't like it at all. I kind of, in a way, sometimes wish we would have quit for a few years in the middle there, but I guess that's not our style.
Was that ever an option or not really?
I don't know. It's weird to think about now. Like, but it's easy. Like hindsight is 2020. Like we should have probably like quit in 2013 and then got back together 2017 because then we would have known what real life is like, and now we still don't.
Yeah, this is sort of your Chinese democracy moment, I guess.
Yes, it is. Like we were even talking about that. Like shit, we're just like 2 years away from Chinese democracy. Like that's nuts.
You were saying the making this record is like making an exciting action movie for you. So talk to me about the making of this record and what it meant to you.
Well, it meant a lot because it was like finally we could like record and we could be like, you know, what we think a band is, like a band that goes in the studio, makes albums and tours, like a band that exists on all corners of the creative spectrum or whatever. But we were, and once we had the songs, it was pretty quick. And the main thing we wanted was that it was going to be like real childish and punk and like insane, like no maturity, like not, especially if you've been away for 10 years, you don't want to be a band that comes back and like, oh, I'm going to tell you about real life and be all mature about it. Like that's not why we got into this music. Like we got into it because it was just like pure excitement.
Yeah.
And we didn't want it to make any kind of sense or be any kind of like commercial considerations or sound like something that people might like. We wanted to be the most uncompromising record we could make. And weirdly, like people really seem to be into that.
I love it, yeah. How did this process of writing this record differ from the other records? Because obviously you didn't have Randy to be part of this process for this record then.
Yeah, the main difference with that was like that we had to, like we didn't have his feedback because usually like we have the songs and we make a version of it. And he would like say, yeah, I like that or I don't like that. But now we had to kind of decide on our own if we liked it or didn't like it. I mean, like the arrangements and finishing the product. Because some of his songs are very finished, like the demos are very finished. Some of them are not. Some of them are like kind of scraps of paper and like vague ideas. And we have to like make it a song. So we had to trust ourselves in that. And that was what was the big new thing, I guess.
Were there songs like we were just talking about before that were too good and the choruses were too big, like we had spoken about? You're like, this is too much of a hit, so let's go back to something a bit more punk rock for this record?
Yeah. There was stuff at least where we're like, oh, that's too much melody. It's too much of a song.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be a song.
We'd rather have snippets.
We want it to be a hit, but we don't want it to sound like a hit, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Like, we don't want it to follow that rule of like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, like big long chorus and all that stuff. But which most, that seems to work. Like people love music that works that way. But we just kind of like feel like, no, the hook should be in the verse and it should be like just a repetitive, all this stuff that we're probably just making it hard for ourselves. But it's the way we hear it.
Although there are kind of hits on this record, though. If we talk about like Rigor Mortis Radio, amazing song, right?
Thank you very much.
Sort of inspired by hip hop in a way.
Yeah, with that. I guess we were always kind of inspired by hip hop, or like at least because it seemed like people in rock when we were young didn't sing about what the stuff we thought rock bands should sing about, like being larger than life and I'm better than you and all this stuff. Like we found that in hip hop, I guess, like kind of that battle rap, like bragging, which is what rock and rollers used to do. Yeah. Like Bo Diddley would do that. I've got a rattlesnake for a necktie and all that stuff. But then, it became so meek like rock lyrics in the early 2000s and like late 90s. It was all about being, you know, I'm weak and I feel bad and I'm depressed and all this stuff. And we kind of wanted it to be the other way around. Yeah, so it was based on that drum beat, and also like that it was no melody. So it's almost quasi-rap, that it's just like, I'm just saying stuff that makes me sound cool, I guess.
And the videos are amazing, by the way. So talk to me about the videos, because you did 2 incredible videos, in particular, Bogus Operandi and Countdown to Shutdown.
Yeah.
Both the videos are great.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the idea from the Evil Dead concept to The Office that you take over.
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of the video ideas historically are usually our like concept, but we can't direct. We don't know how to make film. We don't know how to like shoot stuff or make a schedule or anything like that. So we have to get like directors to, and it's usually weird because directors usually like, that's the guy that calls the shots.
Yeah.
But we're like hiring him to call the shots over. It's like a real messy like thing. But
do you storyboard it first and then give it to them, or do they bring
pretty
the
much,
ideas to
yeah.
you? Okay.
And then they like, because like Ob Perry, who did the Bogus Operandi video, he's like amazing, like big hotshot video director. He did like Harry Styles and Megan Thee Stallion and stuff, like artists that obviously have bigger budgets than us.
Yeah.
But he's a fan and he wanted to do it, and I had like a concept and he kind of tweaked it and stuff, and he like, I have to like hand all that stuff to, like, that was he is the guy that made it that awesome.
The Evil Dead theme, by the way.
Yeah,
For those of you who haven't
exactly.
seen it, it's a great. It's
like a gore splatter film.
Yeah.
So we were like, and I was talking to him like, I just realized that like, isn't there like a censor thing on YouTube? Like, how does that work? And he goes quiet for a bit, and then he goes, "You should have thought of that sooner."
after the video's done.
Yeah. No, after we like started, I think it was right before we shot it. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. But it seemed to be real popular. But that was the same thing too. Like, he wanted it to be like, no, it's got to be like way too much. It's got to be way overboard. Like, it can't make any, like the Hives are coming back after 10 years. I don't want to fuck that up. It's going to be like insane. And I think he managed to do that.
And Countdown to Shutdown, another great video we were just touching base on.
Yeah. Well, that was, kind of also our concept, where it's, I once hosted a karaoke night in an old, like, derelict office building, and there was like, I guess I got some money to spend on it, and all I did to decor it was like shred documents. So it's like a pillowy room full of shredded documents. So we kind of took that, and then we wanted to make a video where someone else was performing and it wasn't us. And we found these guys that are like, those guys are actual like big shot corporate guys. Like, the drummer is the CEO of the biggest mining corporation in Sweden.
Amazing.
And he had this band with these guys for like 30 years, and they're the band in the video. And we're like, isn't this gonna like hurt your stock value or whatever? Like, this doesn't seem very serious to us. But he's like, no, I want to do this. It's great, you know. And they did a great job. It's really fun.
It's amazing. Another great story, by the way, is the time that I think somehow at Dave Grohl's house you threw up on New Year's Eve. By the way, just a story that lives on in infamy.
I did. Yeah.
Talk to me about that story.
No, I was there celebrating New Year's, having a great time, you know. Maybe drank too much Jägermeister. I don't really like Jägermeister much, but he does, I guess. And I remember having a hat made out of a real wolf's head on my head. And I just like, I had like a big shot in his bar, like, and
so you're at his house.
I threw up just a little bit in my hand, and it was just like a little puddle. And I just said, "Well, I think I should go home. That's me." And then I left. That's it.
Were you friends with Dave at that point, or you just happened to be at his house? How does that come about?
I mean, we've played festivals together for like 20 years. Like, we meet like once or twice every summer for 20 years. So I guess, yeah, we're friends, you know.
And again, another band tell me about your relationship with the Arctic Monkeys. Obviously, you just finished a tour with them earlier this year.
Yeah, I love that band. They're great. And I guess we were like one of their early like big influences.
Yeah.
Like, I think they went, like, I think it's the same month or whatever, they went to see the Strokes and the Hives, and that's why they wanted to start a band. So like, we were a big influence on their early stuff, but they've changed so much. Like, I can take no credit for their later work. But
it's almost like lounge music now, right?
Yeah, and or like croonery kind of.
Yeah.
And we did like we toured with them in South America like maybe 15 years ago or something, and had a great time, and it was good, And then this UK like stadium tour they did, so massively popular. I think they sold like 700,000 tickets in like an hour or whatever it was.
Incredible.
And so we did a bunch of shows on this last tour with them, and it was great. I got no complaints.
It's amazing.
Awesome band, and it was fun touring with them.
Yeah, great band.
I'll do it again. 10 out of 10.
It's amazing. We just had Albert Hammond Jr. from The Strokes on the show not long ago. He's a friend. We were talking about Meet Me in the Bathroom around the time when your second record really started happening. Did you ever see that movie by then?
I didn't see a movie. I guess I'm in the book. Yeah, the sound went out. That's why we're...
Hey, Chris, the sound went out. I don't know.
Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, it's still recording.
Oh, weird.
We can't hear it anymore.
It went out on mine, too.
That's weird.
Worst case scenario.
We can keep talking like this, though.
Yeah, I just make sure it's still recording.
Uh,
Are we still good?
I haven't seen the movie or whatever. I haven't seen that, but I'm in the book a bunch.
Yeah.
They interviewed me a bunch of years ago and it was fun. It was fun to talk about that stuff.
Was there a camaraderie between the bands early on?
Yeah, or maybe like a rivalry or camaraderie. I don't know. Like we, I love the Strokes. Like when their first EP came out, I'm like, I'm gonna love this band forever. Like this is great, and I feel like I still do. So yeah, there's a lot of love there. And the White Stripes, we met really early on. Like we did like Top of the Pops together and stuff, and we like. You got color combination too. Like you also play like kind of garage rock. Like, there were so many things we had in common and influences and stuff. And, Jack's been kind of a friend since then, really.
So you worked with him too, by the way.
Yeah. Whenever I'm in Nashville, it seems like we come up with something to do.
Definitely. Well, talking about the tour, we were just talking about it, but you got to be excited. It's kicking off tonight.
Yeah.
By the time we listen to this will be a couple weeks later, so it's
All
not
right.
tonight.
It was a great show, by the way.
Yeah, but the tour, obviously, there's obviously going to be, you're going to be touring for, I guess, like 4 or 5 months on this, right?
Yeah, I don't know how you calculate that. Like we think of it as like we do a tour that's like 3 or 4 weeks, and then we're home for 10 days. Like did the tour stop, or are we still on tour? I don't know. Right. But this is like a longer thing where we do like 3 weeks of US and 3 weeks of South America. And it's going to be awesome. Like this is the first day of that.
Yeah.
So we'll be home for Christmas, I guess. But I'm really excited. Like every city we play is like a good, fun city. So it's going to be awesome.
Where are the crowds the best for you? Do you have a certain city that you just can't wait to go back to?
Mexico.
They love rock and roll over there.
Yeah. Well, there's so many places. Like Glasgow is awesome. London can be awesome. Germany is awesome. All of South America is pretty great, actually.
You love rock and roll. And for the record, there won't be another 11-year hiatus between records at this point.
Well, we're hoping. I mean, fingers crossed. I'm going to do everything in my power to either make a record sooner than that or not be in the band in 11 years when we make the next one.
Are there any more collaborations coming up? We were just talking about it. You work with so many great artists over the years. Jack White, Nerd, Cyndi Lauper, even, for a lot of people that don't know. Timbaland. Any more coming up? Or artists
I hope so.
Artists that you'd love to work with?
Well, our standard answer was David Bowie. That's not going to happen.
With AI, I guess it could happen, but you never know.
Collaborating with AI, David Bowie. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I don't have anything that's like that seems obvious, but all those things are very coincidental. Like all those cool collaborations we did were very like, oh, that just happened. Like it wasn't really something we planned on doing. Yeah. The Christmas single with Cyndi Lauper, though, that was very much like our initiative, and like she's been one of our favorite voices since we were kids.
Amazing.
So that was really fun.
So no other collaborations to speak of, but they'll probably come about organically at some point. I'm sure.
I hope so. Yeah,
definitely. Well, we do this really fun thing at the end of the show. We do these top 5 lists that people seem to debate for ever and ever. So I wanted to ask you your top 5 most underrated rock bands of all time.
Ooh, underrated.
Yeah, starting with number 5.
I have to be like, I have to tell you a little story. My favorite story about this, like Phil Spector was asked at some talk show, like, what do you think is the most underrated artist of our time? And he goes, Elvis Presley. And people start laughing. He goes like, no, really, you have no idea how good he is. I think that's kind of cool.
We found out.
So I wish I had time to prepare this.
Well,
Most underrated bands. Okay.
number 5, let's say.
Number 5, let's say. It's going to be a bunch of Australian punk bands because I feel like they don't get enough credit compared to like the American and English punk bands. I'm going to go with the Australian 70s punk band, The Victims, for number 5. This is going to be, I might have to debate it with myself, but I'm just going to shoot from the hip and go now.
Number 4?
I guess both The Victims and this band, like what they did wrong is they didn't make enough music. I think The Remains, it's a 60s rock band that I love. They should have maybe made more songs, and then it would have been a bigger thing.
We're on number 3.
Number 3.
Well, I could give you one, like the Sonics that we spoke about, but that would be me suggesting
yeah.
to you.
But they're very influential, though.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be number 1, maybe.
Okay. I don't want to influence the list, so
Yeah.
we'll go back to number 3.
This is going to be weird, but I'm going to go with... for number 3, I'm going with The Saints, another Australian punk band, but they did a lot of music later, and that was kind of folky. That was also awesome. He's one of my favorite singers of all time.
They were like pre-AC/DC, I think, right?
Yeah, well, it was like same time, maybe 75 or 76, 77. And...
should have been the top 5 most
for
underrated
number 2,
Australian.
it's the Sonics.
The Sonics.
And for number 5, it's AC/DC.
Oh, no, we're on number 1 now. We're on number 1.
Number 1, yeah.
Number 1 is AC/DC.
AC/DC, because you have no idea how good they are.
That's true. And moving on to this topic too, the top 5 best showmen or show women in rock and roll.
Oh, wow.
Start with number 5.
I feel like I should just do 5 and then put them in order or something.
Yeah, we could do that too.
Okay, best top 5 best showmen. Let's start at number 1. Can I do that? Or is that like
yeah. You can do anything you want.
The drama is kind of fucked up then.
You can do anything you want.
1, James Brown. 2, Mick Jagger for like pure like longevity, like that he's still doing it.
I agree. One of the greatest ever still.
Yeah, exactly. And 3, Tina Turner. These are all like 60s people, I realize. Maybe showmanship is dead. 4, myself.
Yeah, we can put you in there. I'll put you in there for sure.
Thank you. And 5, David Lee Roth.
Amazing. I love that. You're speaking my language. And because you've toured the world and eaten all over, and people love food on this show. So the top 5, let's say, Swedish delicacies that you could ever eat. We probably don't know them here. So
number 1 is something called a toast skagen. Skagen is like I guess you'd call it a salad. It's like a goo.
Okay.
That's like shrimp, mayo, lemon, dill, and sour cream. Kind of like it's like something you could get at like Russ and Daughters. It could be like a Jewish thing, but it's a Swedish like. And they put it on toast, and that's amazing.
Haven't had that.
That's really delicious.
Are we on number 2? Was that number 1 or number 5?
That's number 1.
Number 1. Number 2.
I mean, I don't, Swedish food is like, I don't necessarily love it. I'm going to go with the meatballs for second.
Okay.
It's like meatballs with lingonberry, which are really tart.
There's a very bad version at IKEA.
Yeah, exactly. But there are awesome versions in Sweden. I'll show you the best ones if you're ever there.
Amazing.
And
number 3?
Mashed potatoes and stuff. Number 3, I mean, I've been a vegetarian most of my life, and a lot of Swedish food is not vegetarian. It's just kind of all meat and fish. So this is hard for me. I guess the pickled herring is like a thing. I mean, it's kind of like an acquired taste.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Some of it's horrible. And the number 4 is like something we call caviar, which isn't. It's like a fish roe paste. Kind of a pink, kind of like a tara masalata, but really salty that we put on crisp hard bread.
Sure.
Damn it, I'm going to switch this. That's last. The 3rd thing is crisp bread, like hard bread.
I think we're on 4.
So number 1, skagen, 2 meatballs, 3 crisp bread, 4 is pickled herring and 5 is caviar. Those last 2 I don't even like.
Amazing. Well, this is a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it tonight. By the time you hear this, the show already happened.
Yeah,
I'm excited for
you
your
missed
tour.
it.
You missed it. Check out the new record. It's incredible.
Thank you.
One of the best records. And please don't make us wait another 10 or 11 years for the next record.
Do my best.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Appreciate it.